Yo, what's up? Buff Missionary, we back out here again. Rocking my shirt. Student missions in the house. You know what I'm saying? Hopefully you can see that. You know what I'm saying? Man, we out here. Today was the day. It was the last day of class for my... What was the name of this class? Research design something. I can't remember exactly, but we spent the better part of the last week just grinding, really. There wasn't actually much content, but there was a lot of assistance and coaching going on as we were working on our dissertation proposals. We want to actually get into this for the next couple of years, but this was the first draft, and it was a process, just refining things down, figuring out exactly how we wanted to present this thing. And today was the day. We actually ended up getting to, I almost said perform. We actually ended up getting a chance to present our dissertation proposals in front of the first year class. I'm a second year student with my classmates. We all got to present. It was really fun, really cool experience. We even had a lot of the professors and esteemed doctorates of the program. The guys who are really guiding us and showing us how to do this thing were there as well. So it was a good sneak preview. Definitely a lot more chippier, definitely a more loose and more chill environment than a doctoral defense will be, but I'll take it. So we each had 10 minutes to share our proposal and get out of the way. We only had a couple hours to go through, 7 or 8 of us, and we even had an extra one at the end. So my goal in this video is to send you through what I did this morning already. We'll see if I can do it any better or not. Who knows? I guess we'll see. You won't know anyway, I guess, huh? But I'm going to show you my slideshow, and I'm going to give you my presentation so you know the direction my doctoral dissertation proposal, draft 1, you know what that's going to look like. All right, here we go. Student missions. Towards improving the effectiveness of student mission programs in the North American Division. So student mission programs are part of our major Adventist universities and ran parallel to the mission volunteer movement and student volunteer movement of the 1800s. Historically, the purpose of the missionary volunteer movement is that it had been organized for the purpose of saving young people. That's a quote. I got the document from 1917 where that was said. But it's interesting because while these organizations and efforts have existed for more than 100 years, clearly, research shows that nearly 60% of young people are actually leaving the church. And they're either walking away from Christian churches or from their faith. They're walking away at some point. So we have a problem, right? How do you have a program instituted 100 years ago that's supposed to save the young people, and yet also in the same time span we see young people leaving the church and faith in general at a historic rate? Those two things don't match. The math ain't mathin'. But the coincidence of this issue and the existence of these mission programs raises a good question. Well, it actually raises several questions. How is student missions defined today? How are student missions programs being implemented at the institutions? What are the objectives that student missions programs are seeking to address? What metrics are even being used to measure the success and efficiency of the programs? Is there an assumption that those objectives are being met by default and without any careful evaluation? Let's be real, when it comes to Christianity and a lot of different areas, there's a lot of assumptions that get made about things that are getting done that aren't. I'm just saying. All right, here's the background to the study. The motivation for this area is rooted in my own personal experience as a student missionary. In short, I was a contributor to the aforementioned statistic. I had gone through, Christian school I didn't do kindergarten, homeschooled for that. From first grade all the way through high school, I was in a Christian school and Christian home, Christian church, all of that. And yet by the time I was getting through high school, I was losing my interest in spiritual things, didn't really care at all. Went into college, really not feeling God or anything like that whatsoever. The irony for me is that I didn't find any reason to be a Christian or to have an interest in spiritual things until I went to go serve as a missionary. Shout out to Palau. Let's go. My first year in Palau was just as life-changing as my 5th year in Palau. And when I reflect back on it, I think that the lack of service, it was kind of missing from my young Christian experience. I think that's what contributed to my lack of interest in spirituality. But today, different story. On the contrary, I believe that the mission mentality of service is the very thing that can help young people find a place and an interest in spiritual things. I think service is the key that creates value for people in being a follower of Christ. So for me, and the passion that I have for mission, service, traveling, and adventure, this is something that I want to share with as many young people as possible. Because for me, I would love to see All different kinds of young people experience something special and awesome with Jesus. When I consider the number of young people who have no interest in Christianity and spirituality once they leave the Adventist bubbles, it's a thing, I'm more convinced than ever that the mission mentality of service is the key to retaining the youth. Now, my first year as a student missionary was in the year 2010. I remember being at our orientation in Hawaii, Honolulu. We were at one of the mission schools there. At least 150 young people filled the rooms. The song service were awesome. The small groups were cool. It was great to see how many different people were going out to all these different islands of the Pacific. But by the time I came back to orientation for my 5th year in 2018, there was a little gap in there. Don't worry, I can count. I realized that there weren't more than 50 students there. What had happened? That was the question that was raised for me. Like, what's going on here? Why is this so different? I'm loving the experience. What's going on? So I was able to obtain some numbers from one of my classmates actually in this program. Super legit. I wouldn't have this to back up the reasoning for this study without these facts. So shout out, Doug. Appreciate you, bro. He actually works over at the NAD. And these graphs and these numbers confirmed my suspicions, at least in my context. So check it out. Here's the numbers, and the numbers don't lie. On this graph, we can see the sending organizations per year by division. Within the General Conference, this is like the main body of Adventism around the world. There's 13 divisions. And you can see NAD, that's the pink line at the top, and it starts up at the top with 17 or so different organizations that actually sent out missionaries. You see the number kind of dip and go up and dip down, but by the time you get to 2019, it's less than 10. That's a decrease of almost half. On the contrary, you can see the South American division, which is kind of rising and creeping up, and they've almost had a double in the number of organizations that are sending out missionaries. But the rough part is that if you look at the bottom of the graph, the majority of the divisions have very few, no more than 1 or 2 in a lot of cases, of organizations within the entire divisions that are actually sending out missionaries. Just to give you an example, the North American division covers the United States, Mexico, and Canada, as well as some surrounding islands. So these are the regions that we're talking about. I'm not talking about a city here or whatever, or just a place over here. I'm talking about regions of the world. It's kind of crazy. Now we switch to the volunteers sent per year per division. Once again, you have North American division at the top, at least to start, right? About 354. But over the years, what do you see? This decline. And this line matches up exactly with my time and experience in the mission field from 2010 to 11, my first year, to 2018-19, my last year. And again, when you look at the numbers for the majority of the divisions, is super low. If a division had 2 sending organizations, oftentimes they might only have 2 outgoing missionaries. It was that slim. It is that slim. That's the reality of what's happening right now. We've been looking on the macro level, but let's take it down another step. My paper deals with the North American division in particular, and there are 13 higher ed universities within the North American division. Take a look at this. Outgoing SMs by university. At the top there is actually Walla Walla University. Big shout out, been out there. Their culture is amazing for mission, everything. Shout out Andrea Keel. That's my friend. She's running the program out there. Big shout out. It's like a family thing that's going on there. I don't know really how to describe it, but it's like a culture that the campus has, and she gets to be a part of that. It's really cool to see. Next up, you have my alma mater, Southern Adventist University. But even for Southern, you look at the numbers, that slow decline over the years. The black line in the middle, that's Andrews University. Yes, Andrews, the only school that still has something related to missions in the name. And then the rest of them are down there doing what they can. It's an interesting process and it's a struggle for some. That's why we're doing the study. You know, I said outgoing SMs by university, and I said that there were 13, but if you count the schools on the chart, there's only 11. 2 schools don't even have programs. So as a result of all the things that we see here, I think it's clear that there's an issue on a number of different fronts. I believe that defining the purpose of student missions and its objectives is a refreshment of mind that's needed if we're going to promote this opportunity in an effective way. For as much as I enjoy missions, I've never been told what the objectives of it are. On an institutional level, when programs that used to be staples like Mission Spotlight, they started disappearing from normal presentations on Sabbath mornings, it makes me wonder if our actions match up with our stated goals. There's a little bit of dissonance there. And as I said before, a lot of these same schools that we just saw on the graph used to have mission or missionary in their name, and they don't anymore. So could the gravitation of change in the name also be symbolic of the gravitational change of the university in terms of its value its own mission and purpose. I think the numbers tell us that we see the importance and the emphasis on student missions program largely decreasing. So if we can understand what these programs are intended to do, maybe then we can bring more positive attention to it and see better and more measurable results. All right. Here's the problem statement. A concerning issue within our Adventist educational institutions is the disproportionately low participation rate of students in student missions programs, despite the potential benefits of these programs. This limited involvement raises questions about the purpose and effectiveness of the programs, as well as the perceived value and accessibility of mission programs among administrative and student populations. The problem extends beyond the immediate impact on participating students' personal, spiritual, and cultural growth. With less emphasis and participation, a spiritually appreciative, socially responsible, and globally aware community is less likely to develop. On the surface, student mission seems like it would be directly in harmony with Adventist values in education, yet the support for these programs is not always obvious. Now, when I look at it, that triad of points that I brought up in the third paragraph there, I think is very important. A spiritually appreciative, a socially responsible, and a globally aware community. I'm not even talking about people who are just going out here trying to say, you need to follow this and change your ways and do all of this. I'm just talking about people who can exist well with other people. You look around the landscape of young people today and tell me how good we are at that. You look at social media and you see the way that we engage and go back and forth with people, and you tell me if we're good at that. So this is something that isn't just for young people with a spiritual background, but I think all could benefit from something like this, the mentality of service. That's actually low-key, actually high-key, one of the big reasons why I'm doing this channel. Because I don't think, this might be a discussion for another time, to be honest. I'll put it this way. I think even as an Adventist that a lot of times people focus in Adventism on the wrong things that actually are not helping us be better people and be better Christians as a result. And I think the mission mentality is something that's kind of pushed under the rug because we want to talk about truth and doctrine so much, and we end up missing key and practical opportunities to impact the lives of our fellow men and women and everybody else. But it comes from service. And if we can learn to serve, then we can learn to put ourselves down, not in an unhealthy way or in a negative way, but in a way where we can see other people as worth time and investment as well. There's a trade-off that happens there when we seek to serve others that isn't putting ourselves lower, but it's lifting other people up. When I think of the world and the relations that we have with all different kinds of people and the things that we see out in the world here, isn't that something we could benefit from? To me, that's good news, and that's what gospel should be about. But like I said, different discussion for another time. We ain't going there right now, or at least any deeper than that. Let's get back to the paper. So here's the purpose statement. The purpose of this paper is to gain a better understanding of student missions programs by first, defining the purpose and objectives of the programs. Second, to discover how the programs are being operated and received. And third, finding a clearer rationale to support and promote student missions programs with the hope of increasing student participation rates. So here are the questions that I'm going to be focusing on with my study. There are only three. Promise I can count. Number one, what is the purpose and desired objective of student missions programs? Number two, how are student missions programs currently being operated at our institutions? And number three, what is the student perception of student mission programs and those efforts? Mixed method approach is what we're going to use here. All three questions will have a qualitative component. First, we're going to do interviews. I need to get in contact with the president, the chaplain, and the student missions coordinator for some of these schools. There will be 12 interviews total, 3 at each school, 3 at each selected school. I'm also planning to do a focus group, at least one focus group at each selected school, a group of 6 to 12 students, not just students who like missions or have been a missionary already, but just a random group of students. I would love to see the dialogue and the discussion that goes back and forth between people of different mindsets who don't necessarily all agree on the same thing. I think that'll be interesting, and I think it'll be very insightful. And then quantitative research, trying to spread a wide swath here. Going to develop a survey with a number of questions to send to, again, randomly selected, almost 1,000, no, 100 students at each selected school. I think we'll be able to get some good insight there of a bigger sample size of students in a wider range. Now, I have to mention, there's definitely some delimitations that I'm putting into this report. As I said, there are 13 universities in the North American division, 11 of which that have programs that record sending out missionaries. If I were to do all 13, that would be the dream. for sure, but you're talking at least 40 interviews. You're talking a lot more time, resource. You're talking a lot more of these focus groups. You're talking now more than 1,000 surveys that are going to be going out. It's a lot of work, and I think it would be worth it. But for now, we're going to start here. I'm trying to pass the class, and I also don't want to spend so many years on just this first dissertation and getting the degree. But you can bet, if I can pass this thing and do it well, I'm going to be doing it for the rest of the schools too. I'm coming. But I mentioned selected schools. When you saw the graph, there were a couple schools on the high end. That was Walla Walla and Southern. So I'll focus on 2 on the top end, and I will also focus on 2 schools at the lower end of the sending outgoing SM's graph. I haven't looked at who those schools are yet. Not going to put them out there, but that's what the research is for. So we'll find out when we get there. All right, here you can see my preliminary dissertation outline. It already is going to need some modifications from what you see right here, as I presented this morning and got a lot of feedback already. But we're going to show the charts. We're going to go through the introduction, talking about some of the things already from this slideshow presentation. Biblical rationale for mission. We're going to change to missiological basis of the Bible, which is a lot different and a lot more powerful. We have the literature review. This is going to be interesting on a number of different points. There's a lot of really good books that my professors and classmates, a lot of dissertations that they put me onto, where people are kind of talking about things surrounding short-term mission and their experience. So I'm definitely going to look into that to get more of the current perspective. But the thing that really gets my curiosity going is what happened to the universities. I went to Southern. It used to be Southern Missionary College. I almost said Southern Matrimonial College because that's what they nicknamed it back in the day. But Southern Missionary College. So it was part of the name. It was part of the identity. Shoot, check out my podcast on identity and names. That's a throwback. But a lot of these schools had, as I said, mission or missionary in the name, and they changed from that. What was behind that? What was the reason for that? I can say that and notice that as a historical fact, but was there anything else attached to that? So I'm going to be looking at research and literature that details that. Hopefully I can find something that details that and tells me a little bit more about that. I really want to know. Chapter 4, we're going to look at the findings and the analysis of the interviews, the focus groups, and the surveys. We'll sort all that out and we'll evaluate it. Then we'll get down to some recommendations and suggestions. These aren't, I learned this the other day, recommendations and suggestions in terms of dissertation doctoral research. It's not necessarily saying, hey, you need to do this and you need to do that. I don't know if that will be helpful. But in the terms of this paper, what it is saying, here's what I found in this paper, and here's a topic of study or a topic of interest that might be something worth looking into in the future. Then I give my conclusion and I'll wrap it up with the books. Here's my literature review in brief, or initial bibliography, and it is not complete. There's like 6-7 books on this list, a lot of good stuff, but really I got more than 40 sources and books already, and I really haven't started yet. Gonna be a lot of books. All that being said, at least this morning when I finished, at this point I had 17 seconds left. Now, I'm like 25 minutes into this joint. But anyways, I'm gonna wrap it up with this. Go serve, student missions, you already seen the shirt. It's been something that's so personal and impactful for me, and I would love for other people to experience the same thing. I do think the world would be a better place if more of us had the mentality of serving others as opposed to just serving ourselves. And I think if we can figure out better ways to promote the consideration of service, then we'll be in a better place. I think we really can do a better job defining these programs within our institutions. And I know that there are programs that do things like this that aren't just in Adventist institutions, and that's pretty cool. It might be worth another study someday. But this is something I'm passionate about. This is the reason why I have any kind of interest in spiritual things today, and I'm grateful for it. And if that's anything that I can share and help other people to be able to find the same thing, that's what I want to do. Hey, that's draft 1. We got a long ways to go, baby. But until then, it's the Buff Missionary. We out here and we out. Peace.